But first, accepting large numbers of possible Hamas sympathisers into Australia is becoming a major political crisis for the Albanese government. Now, the first duty of government is the safety of its own people. Yet how can Australia be safe if thousands of people come here who've been schooled from birth to think that Jews deserve to die and that the Western world is evil? This is the problem with accepting anyone at all from Gaza right now. If there is a need to take refugees, then that has to happen in the usual orderly processes of government, with everyone security checked by Australian officials face to face. But it's not our job here in Australia to rescue everyone in trouble across the globe, especially when Gaza's Muslim neighbours, Egypt, Jordan, even Saudi Arabia, are accepting no one, not a single person from Gaza, at least in part because they don't want any more potential Islamist terrorists in their own countries. Now, if their fellow Muslims won't admit them to their countries on security grounds, why the heck should Australia? Right now, we have no effective means of knowing whether Gazans are Hamas fighters, Hamas sympathisers, Hamas fundraisers, Hamas members, and polling shows that roughly 2/3 of Palestinians support Hamas and think that October 7 was justified. Now, let's recall for a moment the October 7 atrocities when Hamas fighters didn't just butcher more than 1,200 Israeli innocents, but they revelled in it. Here's one Hamas terrorist exulting on the phone to his parents.
أبا أنا قاعد أكلمك من جوبا بسيم، افتح الواتس تبعه قول له وام شوف كيف القتلة، شوف كيف قتلت بيدي يابا، ابنك قتل يهود، هاي دخلوا فلسطين يابا. الله أكبر، ربنا يحميك يا رب، ربنا يحميك يابا، ربنا يحميك يابا. قاعد أكلمك من جوال يهودية، قتلتها وقتلت جوزها، عطوا بيدي يابا قتلت عطوا. الله أكبر ولله الحمد.
That's what roughly 2/3 of Gazans say they support. And your Prime Minister wants to import that sort of hate here? He's already handed out around 3,000 visas. He's looking to admit thousands more and allow them to stay here permanently. Now, is this really in Australia's national interest? See this for what it is. It is visas for votes, with a panicked Prime Minister now trying to say that all applications are checked against an ASIO watch list. Now, that is not a security check, and Albanese knows it. All that's happening is names get washed against a computer database. But if we are not verifying the identities of any of these people, and we can't because we don't have officials on the ground, then all we can check is the name they give us. Now, why would any Hamas operative give Australia their real name? This is madness. In the 1970s, out of misguided compassion, the Fraser government admitted large numbers of Lebanese fleeing the civil war. In many cases, that hasn't worked out that well for Australia, with the issue of Middle Eastern crime gangs a huge one for law enforcement. And admitting a large number of Gazans now would be all of that on steroids. In Parliament today, the government was unable to give guarantees that every arrival from Gaza had been security checked.
During question time yesterday, the Prime Minister stated that people applying for visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone were undergoing ASIO security assessments. Will the Prime Minister now confirm that this is not accurate?
Of the more than 2,900 people issued visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone, primarily let in by the former Immigration Minister, the member for Scullin, have all of them been subjected to a biometric test and an in-person interview?
The question was, have all of them? Have all of them, not one.
How many applicants have had their biometric data checked against Israeli government records on known Hamas members or sympathisers and those known or suspected to have participated on the 7th of October terror attacks?
Were all the individuals referred to ASIO for security checks, or was it only where criteria
are hit.
Predictably, the Prime Minister accused the opposition of being destructive, negative, divisive. And equally, inevitably, others went further.
These are families that you are seeking to paint that somehow they are all terrorists. We heard you in silence. You can hear me in silence.
Order.
Stop being racist.
Leader of the opposition.
Talk about Labor's useful idiot. It's not divisive to want to keep Australians safe. It's not racist to demand security checks for people coming from a place that's governed by a terror organisation. Unless the government wakes up to the fact that it's their duty to protect all Australians, not just a handful of militants in its own seats, then this is a government that is not fit for office.